Hello, everyone. Welcome to Commander's Pod. My name is Duncan. Thank you for joining us. I'm joined by Sloan.
Hello.
And Jeff.
What's up?
And we're looking forward to talking to you today about magic overseas. I went to Europe recently. I went to a couple shops, talked to some people, and I just thought it was very interesting. I wanted to share that with you. But first, let's talk about Tales from Table. Sloan, I think you had...
Yeah, so the Assassin's Creed came out a couple weeks ago now at this point, just about a month ago, a little over a month ago now at this point. And so I had pulled the Ezio Auditore de Firenze card that I wanted, and so I built a deck. And so me and my buddies were playing the other night. I finally finished building it, so I started to get to play with it. And I was playing with my buddy David, Clay, and Kim, and Darcy. And so we were all playing a game, and in the game, I got to use Ezio's second ability, not once, but twice, to make two players lose the game by paying Wooburg whenever Ezio deals combat damage to a player. If that player has 10 or less life, you can pay Wooburg. If you do, they lose the game, just to then immediately lose to someone else killing me because I couldn't do anything to get through to them. So it was super cool because I got to use his Wooburg ability, which I was like, I'm never going to use this ability unless I have a Ramsey Assassin Lord out. But sure enough, I was like, well, he's unblockable. You're at 10 life. I have Wooburg up, white, blue, green, red, black. Might as well pay it to make you lose. And sure enough, I got to do it twice in one game, back-to-back turns. And then the last player, David, just swung at me with his flyer and killed me in one shot. And I was like, okay, cool.
Nice.
So I did get to use the ability. I thought it was cool. I got to use it. The free running mechanic that he gives to all assassins, I got to use a lot too, which is super fun. It definitely helps you dump your hand really quick. So I'm still tweaking him. He can definitely get better, but I thought it was super fun that I got to use that ability and just make a player lose the game. And then when it happened, the guy's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that happens. I don't know what to do. And I hit the next guy to do the same thing. He's like, yep, I lose. Like, I don't know what to do. That's it. I can't stop it.
I like the part where you died. That's my favorite
right,
part.
And then I died. So
that was very compelling part, I think.
Yeah. But it is cool that I got to do that, pull off that little combo, and have fun with it. So got to enjoy it. I'm still tweaking him, like I said. He's still improving very slowly, but I think he's fun, and I've been enjoying him thus far. And I was just super happy I actually got to do that. So
nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah. Super fun.
Let's move on to our discussion on to proxy or not to proxy, or how much to proxy.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. I feel like we've kind of talked about over the years of playing Magic together.
Yeah, and my viewpoints definitely changed from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then the middle, it was very different, and then now it's even different still.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll tee off on this one first. So personally, I try not to proxy cards if I don't own them myself. So what I mean by that is, for example, Cyclonic Rift is like a $50 to $70 card. I own one. I'm not going to go and buy 5 more for all of my blue decks. I own one. Like that, in my mind, I own one. I should be allowed to proxy it and put it in another deck. I already paid the cost for it once. I'm not going to do that for every single blue deck. Yeah, and I don't want to have to take apart my deck just to use it. So I will proxy it and just either buy a 25-cent version of it or whatever, like an actual proxy card, or sometimes, which Duncan sees this and Jeff sees this, sometimes I'll just write on a piece of paper and slide it in the card sleeve. This is Cyclonic Rift, and I just put it in there, and that way I know. So for me personally, I don't like to proxy if I don't own the card. If you do want to proxy and you want to play a completely proxy deck, I'm okay with that. Just be honest about what the power level is of that deck, because there are people who will proxy a $5,000 deck and it costs them.
Well, I feel like any
$30.
of these counterspell segments, it's always the caveat is just be honest about what you're actually playing.
Right. So I don't mind if other people want to proxy too. And I do think, in my opinion, that's also a good way to figure out if you actually want to buy that deck in reality. So my buddies recently been playing online. So they build it on Architect and then they play it on Architect. And they don't own that deck yet or own most of the cards for it, but they're doing that because they want to figure out if they actually want to buy that deck or not and if they want to play it. So I like it for that sense too. So I'm okay with it. People play online all the time with free cards they don't own. I don't think it's any different than you proxying it and bringing it to a card shop. So I'm okay with it. It doesn't bother me. Personally, I have my own kind of, I don't want to proxy if I don't own it, especially if it's like a super expensive card, but that's just me.
Jeff?
For me, I do buy multiple cyclonic rifts. I do buy multiples of cards. I don't really have any proxies in any of my decks. The closest thing I have to a proxy is some gold border stuff. But most people, those are still pretty expensive, a lot of those.
Yeah.
And the reason why I don't proxy is because it balances my decks. If I could proxy every card that I own, I would be more enticed to put all the expensive cards in every deck. And this sort of helps limit what I do. It makes me make choices to, hey, yeah, the best land in this would be a sack land with a pain land or something like that. And, that would be the best choice. But I can't afford to put all of that amazing land base in every deck. So I compromise with some of the lands that aren't quite as good. And I think that does sort of make the decks more fair a little bit. That's how I treat it for my personal self. As of my view for proxy out there in the world, I would probably tend to be more where Johnny is, which is if you're going to proxy, I'd like you to own the card. Now, if you're proxying cards that are under $10, have no problem. But if you're coming to a game, unless everybody's doing this, like if you're doing some sort of tournament where you're all proxying very expensive cards, I don't care. That's fine. Everybody knows. But if you're sitting down for a casual game and you're proxying $1,000 card or even a $200 card, I would still play. Unless you ask my opinion, I wouldn't say anything because people are more important than your various opinions. But I'm not a fan of that. I think that is, I'm not a big fan of that. But I wouldn't tell them they can't do it. I just don't think it's in good taste.
So for me, when we first started playing, I'm like, I don't know why people do proxies. You should earn the cards. You should buy them. And then kind of the middle period of playing Commander, I was like, proxy everything. It's ridiculous. Like, these are cardboard. Who cares?
Yeah.
And now my collection's pretty big. I have a lot of expensive cards, and now my attitude is more, I proxy because I build too many decks to own.
Yeah.
Just taking the time to buy the cards, number one. The only card I proxy that I don't own any of at the moment is Mox Diamond, but that's my next big purchase I plan on making.
Yeah.
But I also have I have a deck that I made Toothy and Pier or
blue and green partner commanders.
Yeah, and Toothy Imaginative Rascal or Imaginary Friend and Pier the Imaginative Rascal or something like that.
Yeah, something.
And the whole deck is proxy.
Yeah.
Because I thought it would make cool. Some of you are probably too young to remember Calvin and Hobbes comics, but that to me is what it was. It was Calvin and his imaginary tiger Hobbes. Well, it was a real tiger, but he imagined it was real.
Right, yeah. He imagined it was walking around.
Tiger.
It was a stuffed animal, yeah.
And to me, that was immediately what came to mind. So the whole deck, and I put in cards, not necessarily because they're great in the deck, but because he had a transmogrifier, so the transmogrify spell is in that deck, you know, and stuff like that. I did things thematically, but even the lands, I bought proxy, they're
you built all the proxies.
I built proxy. Yeah. I built them online with Calvin and Hobbes art and stuff.
And I would like to do one of those decks, and I think you showed me a site, and I just need to sit down when I have time and do that. And I'm actually for that type of thing where you're expressing some sort of artistic flavor.
Yeah.
I think that's very cool. So I am going to build a deck like that that's all proxy. I'll probably own every one of those cards, and which cards I don't own, I will probably buy.
Right.
Because I am also a collector. And the reason why I might have 5 Cyclonic Rifts is because at the end of the day, when you and I go to a card convention or whatever, and they have a card I think is cool, I want to buy it. So I have a bit of an addiction as well, not quite to your level, but yeah, I like to own the cards.
And the other thing is, so now that I've been playing in some CEDH tournaments, and a lot of them will allow some amount of proxies.
Yeah, like 10.
And they don't have a caveat that you own the card first.
Right, yeah.
That's kind of why I started proxying Mox Diamond when I don't own one.
Yeah.
Just because it's part of the fast mana for CEDH.
Right.
So that definitely helped change my viewpoint on it too. I don't care if you play all proxies. It does not bother me at all. To me, The fun of the game is the building and the strategy and the play.
Right. Yeah.
I don't care that you own the card. Now, if you pretend like you're owning them, like if they're those proxies that are
like realistic and super,
like I
close.
try and I've started to try and my proxies. I try and do ones that don't look standard. And now there's two feelings on that. Some people are like, if it doesn't look like the card, then I don't recognize it when you play it, and I don't realize it's a threat. There's that level of things by trying to announce.
But at least make sure
spells.
the back is different,
Right.
Like if it's looking like it's trying to just pretend to be the real card, that's a problem because if that card gets out into the general public, someone may not know it's fake. They may sell it to someone else, and so you are actually a part of the problem.
Right.
If you're
and I
doing
think we've
that.
talked about that part before.
Yeah.
Right.
And I talked about how somebody we know, I gave him an imperial seal that I'd gotten off a Chinese website that on the back looked like it all looked like the original Magic card. And he thought years later that he had found this gem in his collection that he could sell.
Right.
And I had to remind him that I gave him a proxy.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
he even forgot himself, and it looked so good. And it wasn't my intention. I just bought a stack of cards.
Right.
off-
Yeah.
If you do happen to do that, I would suggest just take a black marker out on the back of the card, write proxy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, since then, all my proxies on the back are not Magic. You know, they don't say Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
look like the
Someone,
back.
I don't know if it's you or Andrew or someone else from the shop that puts like proxy. It's like the same font, but it
Yeah.
says proxy across
Proxy
the
the
back.
Gathering. A lot of
Yeah,
the sites
proxy the
have that.
gathering instead of like Magic. So it's like a
100%.
still looks good. But
I have one more caveat to all this. If someone is genuinely doesn't have a lot of money and they're getting into Magic and they just want to play, but they genuinely don't have the money, I would rather that person proxy than waste, especially if they're young, because you need to be saving your money, putting it away, making good decisions, maybe save it for a business or a house. I'd be okay if you proxied everything. My rule that I have where like I don't think it's in good taste is when people they buy these they proxy these very expensive cards and they're like power gaming, but they're skipping the whole part that limits the power of these cards. Gaia's Cradle's power is limited, not because it's not an amazing card in every aspect, but because it's $1,000. That's why you don't see it all the time. And so when you take that away, I think that's a bad idea for the game.
Well,
on some of those cards.
To some degree, you're right. To some degree, you're wrong. I own proxies of Gaia's Cradle, and outside of tournaments, I don't put them in decks.
Well,
just
right, and
think
I have
it's
no
too
problem with
strong.
that. Yeah, I have no problem with that. In tournaments where everybody agrees, proxy whatever you want. But in casual play, there's really no reason to have a Gaia's Cradle, and certainly not one in every deck since
Right.
they're free for you.
Right.
That's a problem for me. I would think that's in bad taste.
Right. So that's kind of our feelings on proxies. You all have your own, but that's just kind of our takes. I think overall, all three of us agree in the right situations, they're not bad. Just be careful how you're having them come across.
Yeah, I mean the big thing is because of a lot of these deck building websites now, they have play testing where you can literally play Goldfish online and then you can just do that with other people. I don't see the difference in that and then proxying an actual card. You know, it's the same exact thing. You know, it's so in my mind that's why it's like not that big of a deal. And I do say I think that is the way my buddies do it because you know, Darcy and Clay and Kim and all those guys I play with. That's how they actually, like I mentioned at the beginning, determine if they actually even want to buy these cards to build this deck. And I think that is a good reason to do it because, like Jeff said, if you're trying to be responsible, going and spending $400 on a bunch of cards, and then you build the deck and you start playing it, you're like, I actually don't like this deck. It's like,
And then
you know, it's like a feels bad moment where it's like, I wish I wouldn't have spent $400 on this deck. You know, so I'm
and
okay
then
with it,
not
yeah.
to hurt Magic or any of that, but just do me a favor. If you are saving up, you don't yet own a house, you're just getting married, maybe your first kid is coming, add up how investment works. When if you don't spend $600 every year on cards, and then instead you would take that and you put that away into the market and see what happens compounding interest over many years. Please, you're going to get to a point in life where you could go buy lots of cards. You know, Duncan, Johnny, and I, you know, especially between Duncan and I, we buy it, we spend a lot of money on it. We got you covered. When you're in life and you need to be saving and being responsible, please be responsible and let some of the whales help you out.
Right. Right. But anyway, Jeff, what's aggravating you today?
Actually, it's funny. We're talking about sort of value and where to spend your money. One of the things that's aggravating me is I've been playing Magic long enough, and card sleeves, I don't think they're the quality they should be. Now, I do mostly Dragon Shield, but they're not lasting very long for me. And I know we always see those things where people are like, these things have lasted forever. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but these things are not lasting forever.
And you don't play that much.
I think that's the issue is they're not being played enough.
My cards get played a lot.
Right.
I don't always play them. My kids play them a lot. Which next recording we do, I have a different what's aggravating me that talks about that a little bit. But for this, it's really card sleeves. I don't know if it's the quality is purposely not what it should be, or if this is just my expectations are too high. But it annoys me how much I have to buy sleeves and re-sleeve stuff. And maybe it's less the dollars and more the time of re-sleeving them that annoys me.
I agree with this. I'm abusive to my collection. I keep them in my car in the hot Florida weather.
Yeah.
For cardboard, that's not so bad. The foils, some of them don't like it too much, but the cardboard itself doesn't really.
Right.
But I think probably my sleeves take the biggest abuse.
Really? Okay.
And you'll find they'll like ripple.
Okay. Yes.
Like they'll get kind of like a.
I have seen that on yours.
And so I would like them to come out with like a heavy duty line of sleeves, ones that can take the abuse, ones that can take.
Yeah,
the
I
heat.
suppose that's where I'm at too, because it's not the money so much as for me, it's the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, if they had a better sleeve, I'd buy it.
So I agree with that. I think that, they need to step up their game. So a lot of people will say, oh, katanas are better. I've tried katanas. I don't think they're any better than Dragon Shield.
I haven't tried katana. I have done Eclipse, yeah.
Eclipse to me are the cheaper ones. They last least.
They're not cheap though. They're actually more expensive, I think.
No, they're less than Dragon Shields per box. I think you can. Yeah, for 100 Dragon Shield, it's between like 12 and 15, and for Eclipse, it's like 8 to 12 or something.
Okay,
like
well,
that.
I always buy Dragon Shield. I try to buy matte, but the corners get. It might be the way I'm shuffling, but the corners.
Have you tried the dual matte? Supposedly they're a little more.
I haven't. And matter of fact, guys, if you're out there listening, guys and gals, and you know of some sleeves that are really, really good, please let me know. I'll really appreciate it. Be happy to give you credit on a podcast if you can get me hooked up.
I don't think there's some secret brand we're going to find out about. I think there's a two-side thing of katana versus Dragon Shields, and then a very small following. They're like, no, Ultra Bro. And it's like, I think that's pretty much the three arguments.
I mean, I will say, the way you shuffle is a big play on that, because certain people, like, they're really rough when they go to like put the cards together. They kind of really push them, and that can kind of wear it down, as opposed to if you see other people that are like able to like kind of almost rainbow it in. I think that's a little bit better.
I think what's killing me is sometimes my kids and the neighbor kids, they flip the cards around.
Yeah.
So the way I shuffle, you kind of want to be shuffling from the bottom in.
Yeah.
So it's hard to explain over a mic, but if they're flipped around the other side, you're actually pushing cards into the sleeve sometimes.
Right, and it's
So that's part of the problem.
I will say, like, the Ultra Pros that have the art on them, like they have the art from the sets.
Yeah, pictures and stuff.
Hot garbage, in my opinion. They tend to split very easily.
Yeah, I have to keep buying the Atraxa ones because my Atraxa deck has to have Atraxa sleeves.
It
That's
doesn't
really
have
annoying.
to. That's not.
It does have.
It doesn't say that in the rules. Anyway.
Hey, I don't make the rules.
You
but
do
they're
actually.
there. No.
Pretty sure
that rule he made. I used to really like.
Because that would be ridiculous if I just made up rules. Then who would do that?
There's another
Magic.
company called, I think, Legion Games that makes sleeves and other accessories.
Yeah.
And I really like their matte feel. It's almost like it's not a powder on it, but it almost feels like a powder coating.
Right.
So it's like the bottom of a Domino's pizza?
Yeah, except it doesn't come off in your hands.
Yeah. That's what we need. Cornmeal sleeves.
Yeah. But it's not.
Someone out there.
I can't explain it, but that's what it felt like to me. Anyway, I really like those, but those do tend to split as well. I like those for the shuffle feel more than anything else. They shuffled so nicely.
Duncan's favorite sleeves are, I think, my negligee ones that he always makes fun of.
Your what?
He has these. I call them his negligee shields because you can see through the back.
Yeah,
Like they're not tournament legal. They're a red sleeve.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're super
But
thin.
they're only semi-translucent.
You guys have a weird relationship.
Don't worry about it.
And he has like, how many sets of those do you have?
I think I bought a pack of 20.
Yeah.
So
20 sets.
20 sets. So I have 100 set.
Yeah. So they'll be around for a while.
2,000.
Yeah.
2,000.
20,
it.
About 2,000.
About that time.
But
Well, I
yeah,
reckon.
but I have some of those as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't like them when I got them. You've been managing to deal with them pretty well. They work fine.
Yeah, I mean they're not. I mean, I've noticed some of them kind of broke, but again, a lot of that has to do with because I shuffle pretty quickly and aggressively when I'm trying to goldfish, and some of that's on
He
me,
does
but-
everything
yeah,
pretty
he
quickly
does
and
everything
aggressively.
aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
I do inner sleeve too, though, and that's a
I
pain
only
in the
do that
butt.
with my
That's
special
ridiculous.
decks. I've
Well,
always,
that could also be one of the reasons why your sleeves are cracking so much because
Yeah.
you're putting a thicker card in there and it's kind
It
of
could be.
forcing.
I only do that on a few decks, but I would if it was up to me and I could, I'd probably. Well, it is up to me, but I don't want to
Nope,
waste. It
the
takes
rule says
so
it's
much
not up to you.
it
It's not
takes
up to you.
So much freaking time to inner sleeve. It's unbelievable.
well, and I do get to a point sometimes where I have gone on like the Chinese websites or like Temu or Wish or
Yeah.
Amazon. Well, Amazon's not Chinese, but I'm saying and just buy the bulk
Yeah.
stuff. And I really think it lasts pretty much as long. I think the differences are in shuffle feel, and you get like the negligee sleeves as I call them.
Yeah,
where you can kinda
No,
see
no
through
one
'em.
else calls them that.
No, but nobody else refers to table condoms either.
Wow, this is a weird. We've had some weird podcasts
But
the last two.
Anyway, I'm just saying. So sometimes I just think it's not worth paying the money for the dragon shields. Other times I'm like, but they look cool and
Yeah.
they do tend to hold
Yeah.
up maybe a little better. I convince myself, and then I'm not sure. But anyway, I do like that one. I do think it's a common concern we all have. Let's talk about that doesn't do what you think it does. And today we're talking about what threat assessment is.
Right.
And what I mean by that, it's not just what's on the table, folks. Like, it's so much more. It's play style sometimes. It's how many cards do they have in hand. It's who has the best value engine sometimes. Maybe somebody has the worst board state,
It
but the
could
best
be
value
their
engine.
graveyard.
Yeah. Threat assessment is a lot of things, and that's why it's so hard for
Right.
some people. You know, especially in our ADD world, trying to figure it out when it's hard to focus for people, I'm sure is tough. But
Right. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into threat assessment, and one of the things, because we have talked about this before, briefly, but one of the things I would say is that sometimes, and this is why it's difficult, threats are different for each deck.
Yep.
What might be threatening for the rest of the table may not be threatening for your deck, and you don't care. And I'll
Right.
give a classic example of this. We were playing a game, and someone put out the artifact creature where it says only no more than one creature can attack each turn, no more than one creature can block each turn.
by someone you mean lizard.
Lizard, right. Lizard, I put this out. I believe it's Silent
Arbiter.
Arbiter. Okay. So Silent Arbiter, it's an artifact creature, you put it out. And a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, we got to kill that thing. It's like, it's nerfing everybody. Well, everyone was super upset about it because a lot of them were kind of like go wide decks, right? So they had like a lot of small creatures. And I was sitting there, I was like, oh, this is great. I have a menacing creature, and it was my night creature where my equip cost for nights was 0, and I had a bunch of equipment out. I'm like, I can just start one-shotting people, and literally nobody
Yeah.
can
and
stop me.
I think you mentioned this one a couple episodes
Right.
ago.
And so I
Somebody
was
went
like-
and jumped all over removing it.
Right. And so it was, and like someone was like, oh, we need to remove it. And like everyone's like, we need to kill Lizard. And like, I'm trying to like protect Lizard and keep him alive because I'm like, my man's about to let me win the game. Like, no one can stop me. I'm about to hit everybody with like a 40-40 commander that no one can block because it's menace.
But what that really meant is that it was doubly a threat because not only was it stopping them, it was helping you.
But a lot of people weren't even focused on the part that it was helping me. They were just so worried about it being a threat towards them.
Right.
And then
So
the
they were
first
making
time.
they were making the right decision for the wrong reason.
Right. And so, and like everyone was like asking me, they're like, dude, you need to kill him, like, or kill that. I was like, I'm not going to kill him. I'm going to keep him alive. I'm going to kill all you guys.
Yeah.
Like,
Him and I are buddies right now.
Yeah. Me and him are best friends, you know, talking about my best friend, like that whole skit. Like, so that's what I mean by when you're sitting down and you're doing threat assessment, kind of like Jeff mentioned, it's what type of deck are they playing sometimes against what type of deck are you playing? Because what they're doing might be actually beneficial for what you're trying to do, and the other players are saying that's an issue, and you might be like, I mean, for you guys,
that is an important distinction.
Right.
Threat assessment is not the same thing for everybody at the same time.
Exactly. It is a case-by-case basis, and that's why...
And so that's another thing that feeds into it. Sometimes when people are yelled at that they don't know threat assessment, it's because you didn't agree.
Correct.
And sometimes you may be right for you.
There's also two very important parts to threat assessment because so like when you deal in the world of dealing with people, you talk about emotional intelligence, right? And in emotional intelligence, there's understanding people and there's understanding yourself. And if you just understand people, you're probably not going to be very emotionally intelligent if you don't also understand yourself. In the same way, when you get to threat assessment, it's not just assessing what the other threats are to you. It's your ability to correctly assess your threat level. And that's very important because there are people that come out really strong and they're like, why are you all targeting me? And it's like, because you're by far the scariest thing, as opposed to slow rolling it a little bit more and then coming out with that win all at once, right? People tip their hand too much and make themselves a threat so everyone targets them. Sometimes it's good to understand if you play that card, whether you think it's powerful or not, you're going to become the threat. Have a plan for that. Be able to assess where you are threat level wise too and how other people are going to view you. Otherwise, you could be getting all your stuff targeted when you need them targeting others. Right. So there's two levels to that threat assessment.
And the other thing is threat assessment is not how something makes you feel.
Right.
And I think that's
well, for
very
some
important.
it is. Clearly, for some people, it is.
Yeah.
But I'm saying a lot of people, a card makes them feel panicked or feel threatened, and they'll go after it.
Right.
Stop. It's not about feelings. It's about reality and what it's doing to your game state in the moment.
Yeah.
You look at it and you go, that's going to shut off all my artifacts. You don't have any yet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a threat if you don't have any yet.
Right.
Well, and that's also why you have to have different ways to win. The reality is if they've killed your commander 7 times
Yep.
and you can only win with your commander, it's pretty bad.
I think
have
we
other
need to
ways
clear
win.
something up, Jeff. Where do you keep your threat assessment?
I keep my threat assessment in, well, I can't say the actual word, but I've been told I keep it in my bum by one particular person.
So I was going to say, you know, there's a famous episode among us that there was an episode where I won't mention the other player, but we've mentioned them before. And Jeff had a disagreement about Jeff's threat assessment, and they told him it was in his rear end.
Yeah.
And, you know, don't get personal when somebody doesn't agree where the threat is. Now, of course, that usually comes from the person that you identified as the threat that does that.
Right. Yeah. And because I will say there are certain cards that in general are just good and are going to give advantage. But then there are particular cards which only threaten certain playstyles. Like you said, like for example, this turns off artifacts. Well, I'm not playing an artifact deck. I don't care. I don't have like any artifacts. I could care less that turns off artifacts.
Or I have
but
one.
the other two players might be playing all artifact decks, and
I
like
have
they're all
one,
bent
and
out
they
of
each
shape
have
about
3 or 4.
Yeah.
I would sacrifice my one to get rid of their 3 or 4 each.
100%.
Right. You know, and so that's the thing is, and this is why I kind of distinguish table talk and politics a little bit, because like sometimes I'll be like, hey, risk 6 studies out on the field. This could get out of hand. Just be wary that he, like Duncan's a spell slinger deck and he just put risk 6 study out. I know you want to play 3 spells, but are you going to pay for those 3 spells?
But they'll say things like, but he's not doing anything. And Duncan will go, but I'm not doing anything.
Right.
And you're like, well, he has nothing on his board. Well, that's not correct threat assessment. He now has 20 cards in hand.
Right.
Yes, he's not doing anything that you can see, but he's winning. How's he winning? He's got nothing on the battlefield because he's got 20 cards in hand.
And sometimes in sheer spite, I will say, you know what? Let's get to Duncan's turn and let's see how he's winning. Like just, I won't do anything on my turn. Land, pass.
And
like,
then
let's see what happens.
There's a last part to this threat assessment is you have to determine how sweaty you want to be because there are different levels of playing.
Right.
But if you want to be a really sweaty player, there's threat assessment that goes into other games. So, for instance, if I know someone feels real comfortable targeting me because I typically make the right decision, meaning they can target me, which is a mistake, and I'll still target the right person, I won't be vindictive, right? So then there is some threat assessment where you have to go, okay, hold on, that's a problem. I have to change that behavior if I'm regularly playing with that person. So I might make the wrong decision in the moment to send a message for other games. And that is important sometimes. If someone's playing stacks decks a lot, and that does affect a lot of your decks, it's not affecting this deck, you might target the heck out of them because you just want them to know when they play stacks, you're coming at them. There's something to be said about that, but be careful where you play it because there is a part where you move out of being strategic and move into just being vindictive, and that's not super nice.
Right, and it's hard to prove which way you were going. Sometimes.
Well, and you don't have to prove it.
Well, I mean,
but
Jeff always targets
you
me.
want to play with people. You do have to you don't want feels bads. You know what I mean?
There's some truth to that, but when you're playing your cards, like you said, we get to target who we want to target.
I mean, I will say Jeff always makes me feel bad because he usually targets me for everything. And he's like, it's a compliment though, Sloan, because you're a good player. I'm always killing you first.
And I've said out loud on here why I do it.
Because
I can't control you.
Yeah.
And because I can't control you when I do the math, I got to take you out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just not a puppet is what he's saying.
Correct.
Right. But so I just thought that was an important distinction to make. Threat assessment is not just what's on the table.
Yeah.
Sometimes too, you were talking about it goes outside that game. It can also be somebody's won 3 times in a row and they're still playing the same deck. They're probably, that deck's probably a little more powerful. The threat assessment might automatically be that guy has an advantage.
Right.
100%. If they're playing a Voltron deck where they can come and win out of nowhere, yeah, they might not have the stuff on the battlefield right now, but that comes into play. The other guys I can see when they're going to win, right?
Right.
I got a couple turns I don't have with you, so I'm going to kill you first.
And threat assessment is also not who has the most scary creature.
Yeah.
Right? No.
Yeah. So
and then what is a scary creature? This is very important. Let's talk about this for a second. A 2020 with no abilities is not a scary creature.
All you need is a single blocker.
Yeah, right. And it could be a 0/1 Scion freaking creature.
Right.
What is scary could be a 1/1 with lots of abilities. You need to look at the synergy that's going on with the cards,
Right.
not the power and toughness.
Yeah.
Or the mana cost.
Or if they have the ability to give evasion, look at their lands. If they have a 20/20 and they have a land that can give them evasion, now that 20/20 is very powerful.
Right. Yeah. And and that's the thing. So it's one of those topics where the more you talk about it, the more complex it becomes and the more difficult it is to explain. So just one of those things where it's Pandora's box.
Well, it's
every single
situational.
time. Yeah, well, and that's the reason. It is literally an evolving definition. It evolves based off of the situation. Literally in one turn, and we've played a lot of games together. There have been games where in one turn, every single person when their turn ended became the threat, and then we had to deal with them. And then because they got dealt with, the next person then on it's very hard to give an actual definition of how to properly threat assess. But the best thing I think we would all agree on and all say is it is a situational, what are you doing to what is happening instance. And that's how you have to go at it. Just because 2 other people think it's bad doesn't necessarily mean that's the threat.
Right.
It's just one of those things. Think about what you're trying to do, think about what's happening, and think about what they're saying the threat is, and then base it off of all of those facts before you just blatantly agree because someone said to you, oh, that card's going to slow us down, we're going to have issues, and it makes artifacts not work, and you're looking at your deck and all your cards and you're like, I don't have any artifacts. I don't know what is this we are speaking of.
You got to think a couple turns ahead for yourself.
Right.
And you have to think a couple turns ahead for them.
Right.
And so I think in our group I get it, I'm not just accused, but it's probably true. I'm by far the slowest player.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, even if people are getting mad at you, you just take the time to think ahead, like, okay, if that's their play, what other possibilities can they have in their hand? What mana do they have up?
Right.
How many cards do they have? What could they possibly have? For that commander, what is the most common cards that commander runs, and what could I possibly be looking at? Mm-hmm. For instance, your ninjutsu deck, right?
Right.
If you are getting to 10, 11, 12 mana, you have cards that cost 10, 11, 12 mana. Probably no one else does, because not everybody plays 10 or 12 mana cards, but in that deck you have them.
Right.
So when we get to that level, you're much more of a threat than anyone else because you can actually take advantage of that mana where others might not be able to.
Yeah.
So that is important to think about
Right.
too.
So
The last thing I did want to say about this too, if you're new, right, or you're not sure what the threat is,
Right.
if you're getting a lot of different opinions.
Sure.
Sometimes listening to how things are said clue you into what the reality is. And let me give you an example of that. If somebody is saying I and me, like, in my opinion, you got to kill that thing, because I'm telling you right now, that thing he's going to kill me first and he's going to kill you, blah, 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 right? As opposed to somebody that says, if you don't kill this thing, it's going to kill us. We're all dead.
right.
Yeah.
They're both saying kind of the same thing.
But one's coming from I need you to help me.
Right.
Right.
So all things being equal, sometimes that type of wording can clue you into what really is going on.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean,
It doesn't mean either of them are being honest, by the way.
Right.
So that's another part. But I'm saying, all things being equal, that is something to also look at.
And I will say this too on that note to kind of footnote it. If you are playing with newer people who don't really know the game, be a good Magic player and be honest with them to an extent. You don't have to show them your hand and show them everything. But if they look at you and say, listen, I'm new to Magic, and I heard on this great podcast, the Commander's Pod, that could be a combo piece. Is that the card I think it is? And could you possibly do this? Like, Exquisite Blood and combo off. Don't just blatantly lie to them and be like, no, this isn't that card. Like,
Right.
be a good Magic player and be
I
honest
did-
and say, yes, this is a combo card. And that's all you have to say, and just be honest with them. Like,
But it doesn't mean I have it now.
Right. Yeah,
At least
just-
that is not being dishonest, but saying I don't have the other piece in my hand when you do.
right. Just
That's another. It's a separate subject we got to talk about sometime.
We
is
will,
the
but, I mean, my big
the
thing is-
lying stuff really bothers me. But anyway.
because there's always new players coming to this game, especially with the Bloomburrow set that is coming out. At the time of us listening to this, the week before it came out.
When this one comes out, it will. If the
Last-
full release was last week.
Right, exactly. So the Bloomburrow come out the week before. We probably have a lot of new players because of that art style and that world that plane that a lot of people came to. They're not going to know as many cards or how things work. If we want to keep growing this game that we love, being honest with them and helping them out. So just don't lie to people about threat assessment, please. Like, if they're new, at least try to help them out and keep them around in the game. We don't want them being like, I left Magic because every single time I asked somebody something, they just lied to me about it. And then at the end of the game, they're like, oh no, you should have killed that. I was lying to you. I just wanted to win. Like,
Yeah.
no one's going to stick around and play if that's how everyone keeps treating them. So,
But anyway, we'll get into lying some other time. But so
it's
just threat assessment. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of
so much.
layers.
So much.
You got to get your own skill set, but don't do knee-jerk reactions. Don't go on how you feel. Sit and assess the situation. Use your best judgment. If you always think about things rationally, at least you can say, well, I thought about it rationally, even if you made the wrong decision.
Right, and you can at least say, well, I thought it was because it affects me in this way, and I thought that was a lot bigger deal than it may have been. And like you said, if you can rationally give a reason why you did it, I will never get upset at someone for doing that. Now, someone doing something that's completely irrational, and I sit there and I stare at them and I say, why? Like, why did you do that? And they're like, oh, I didn't like the art on that card. I'm like, dude, you're killing me.
Well, you're being a little...
I know I'm being a little dramatic, but there is a story that I've told before where someone blew up something that was keeping Duncan from winning the game. And I said, at the end of the game, I said, why did you do that? He goes like, oh, well, that could have been an issue for me down the road, so I just wanted to deal with it. And I said, it did not affect anything you were doing in the moment you did it. And I said, if you do not do this to Duncan's creature, we are losing the game as soon as he starts his turn, basically. And he said, nope, I got an answer for that. He passed the turn to Duncan, and then Duncan won. And I just looked at him. I was like, where was your answer, man? I thought you had an answer. He's like, oh, I didn't realize I was going to do that. I was like, dude, I told you it was. Yeah. So, I mean, but with that, I think we're going to move into story time here. And
Well,
Story time.
We're going to talk about... So I went overseas. I went to Greece and I went to Turkey.
Which... For how long, by the way? Because it was.
We were there 9 days. It was a 7-day cruise, and then we had some time.
Just didn't even show up to work any of those days.
I know, what a bum.
Just took
Didn't
my
answer
vacation like
any
a
calls. Just send in
Philistine.
pictures of all these ancient buildings and cool sites you're visiting while we're over there. I would say while we're working, but Jeff doesn't really work, so he sits in his office and then doesn't sit in his office.
I'm literally working right now as a customer is texting me.
But yeah, how did it go, man?
It was awesome. Great trip. I'm not going to bore you guys with the details of my trip, but I will talk about, I wanted to go into some magic shops while I was over there. So,
That's what we're here for.
So in Athens, Greece.
Wait, hold on 1 second. He goes to his wife's dream vacation in Athens, Greece, and this dude goes to magic shops. So first of all, Eva, amazing wife.
Yeah, thanks for letting him do
Duncan
this.
definitely married up because that is. I think my wife might let me do it, but there would be a cost when I came home.
Yeah,
or
I mean,
back to the resort or hotel.
Thank you, Eva, for letting Duncan do this, so we have something to talk about.
She did end up with a giant. I mean, she's already married, but I got her a new ring. She's got a giant stone on her hand.
So there you go. That's what you do. Go to your card shop and then just buy your wife things.
Buy the love and affection of your wife.
Yep. How else do you think I got it? I mean, come on. Let's be honest. But anyway, so the first shop that I had researched and I wanted to go to was in Athens, Greece. And I couldn't even tell you the name because I don't speak Greek. I knew it at one time and I didn't write it down. But it was the biggest store that was in Athens.
Cool.
It was a cool store. It was awesome. They actually had board games that you could borrow and sit down and play.
Okay.
They had magic cards. They had...
so it was more of like a tabletop store where they kind of had a little bit of everything.
There was a cafe inside.
Oh, wow.
I wish we had more of those here. That's awesome.
It was really cool. Now, when I went in there, I'm like, nobody's playing Magic. There's a couple families playing some board games. No, it's Sunday afternoon.
Right.
When we were there. Or Saturday afternoon. So I'm thinking I would have seen Magic players. And I'll get to why in a minute because I didn't learn why until later. But anyway, so I went and asked if they had any Greek Magic cards. And she said, we have Magic cards, but we don't have any in Greek. They don't print them in Greek. And I was kind of like, well, I had looked them up and I saw them.
Yeah.
And she goes, oh, I don't have any. And I knew they had stopped printing some.
Right.
She goes, I had some singles we have listed online. If you want to look through those, I don't have the complete list, but if you find one in Greek, then I can go try and find it. I said, okay. Not a single one. So I'm very confused. And so she does some research very nicely because she's also the barista and the only employee working in this place.
Yeah.
But she did some research. So the cards I had seen in Greek were in ancient Greek, and there was like a handful of cards written kind of like a Secret Lair before they did Secret Lair. It's
right.
Like a promotional
Oh,
thing.
you got it. Tell me you got some of those.
No, they didn't have any, and you can't touch those. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those are probably like way up there.
I did
cost,
get
I would imagine.
At a different shop that I'll talk about later, I got a traditional Chinese, written in traditional Chinese, which again, that's another thing they did for promotional, not for a set. Artist proof.
That's
Cool
cool.
cards. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Because normally they print in current Chinese, not the traditional Chinese.
Yeah, Mandarin or whatever.
Yeah. But anyway, so I bought some packs and we hung out for a while and had a drink, but I was very let down and disappointed. I'm like, I really wanted that European to see what Magic was about. But we went about our cruise. We were cruising through the Greek Isles and we stopped in Istanbul for 2 days. So I looked it up. There's a shop in Istanbul called Pegasus, and then a word I can't pronounce, but it translates to Pegasus Toys.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I stopped by there, and immediately very different vibe. There's all the things you see in the current stores that usually sell Magic. There's Magic cards, Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards,
Right.
Warhammer, lots of open tables.
No barista?
There was they had a, I wouldn't call it a cafe, but they had like a corner where they had the snacks and drinks.
Okay, so no barista.
No barista
I like
this
the
time.
first store.
Yeah.
You would.
But and I got talking to the guys, and first of all, their collection of singles was amazing. Like they had binders full, and they were organized by mana value, which I hadn't seen before. But then,
Yeah, that is interesting, but that makes sense.
well, and when I went
You're
to
building on a curve.
when we got back, I stopped at a store in Philadelphia because we had a layover, and
Mm-hmm.
same thing. So apparently that is a thing people do, but I had never seen it. in the
Smart.
shop.
I like it.
That's not
But
bad.
I came talking to them, and well, so here's the difference in Magic here and Magic there. In Turkey specifically, there is a 65 to 95% tariff on imported Magic cards.
Jeez Louise.
So that's talking about sealed product.
Right.
So their price on product is double or more what we pay over here.
Right.
But they can get the singles without a tariff?
They can get the singles without a tariff,
So that
but
makes
it's hard to
sense.
build a collection from a singles. You can build a single deck, but you have to have something to build the deck off, so it's got to come from somewhere. So they
I
all
mean,
go
I
back.
mostly buy singles, so.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, too, they use Card Kingdom. I thought they would use Card Market because Card Market is European, but they use Card Kingdom
Interesting.
there.
Yeah.
Probably better prices.
That's what they said. Yeah, and the shipping was better. They said.
Wild, huh?
Yeah, but it's because they were in Turkey and
Yeah.
that's just how it worked out there. In Greece, it might have been different.
Right.
So I talked to two guys. I talked to Arhan and I talked to Gorkum. They were
Awesome
both-
names, by the way.
Yeah. They were both super nice. But they were telling me because it's so expensive over there, most of the people that play have a lot of extra money and have at least an MBA because
Jeez.
that's how they got a good job to get the money.
That's why they got a barista up in the store.
Yeah, that's why they have baristas in their
Yeah.
card
But-
shops.
so they were all at work. Now this was on a Tuesday in like 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Right.
They're all at work. Nobody's playing Magic. The store was empty.
Which is fairly true for most magic shops.
Yeah, I
at
mean
2 or
most
3 in
Magic
the
stores.
afternoon.
But during the day, you might see some kids playing Pokemon or
Yeah,
buying
maybe.
Pokemon or
Yeah.
something. But the kids can't afford Pokemon over there.
No, for sure.
You know, so I just thought that was very interesting. And so going through the cards and talking to them, and the owner of that shop used to do Pro Tour.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so he's a
Back
real
in the day.
gamer. Yeah.
And now he'll go to all the big cons. So he just got back from Magic Con Amsterdam.
That's
Okay.
That's probably a wild time,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
All them nerds.
No, Amsterdam's wild, man.
But yeah, so that's why there wasn't anybody there at the first shop. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you talk for
Yeah. Duncan's dying over here. Well, it is funny that he said that they literally have to have a degree level job to afford Magic because, I mean,
I don't think that's untrue here.
I mean, I don't have a degree at all, and
Yeah.
I mean, I can barely afford Magic, but still,
I
can
mean,
still
most
get
of your
cards.
collection was that one big purchase, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do get lucky, and I stumble across people in their misfortunes and steal cards from them basically for a fraction of the cost, so that helps. But
Buying collections. is
yeah,
what it
by
means.
buying collections. So, but yeah, I mean that's wild to me that they're like, yeah, they're all busy working, that's why they can't play Magic, but they're working so they can buy Magic. It's like
Well,
it's
I think they have disposable income.
disposable income.
Yeah.
That term was used a lot.
yeah.
You know. So but anyway, I went through their collections. Now they did have a bunch of foreign language cards in their singles, and I bought some of those just because I wanted to have some.
What do
in
they
a
speak
collection.
in Istanbul?
Turkish.
Okay, so did they have any of those? Do those
They don't
does that
print them.
exist? They don't print them.
No. And so Magic has, I think at most they printed in 13 or 14 languages.
And,
And
they've cut back on that, I think.
They're down to like 8,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or they're going down to 8 soon.
Which makes sense, but it sounds like maybe they should just print it in English the way it is.
right.
With
And
those
so,
type of tariffs, what's the point?
but all their packs are in English basically. They had 2 boxes of Russian, so I bought a couple packs that were in Russian just
Yeah.
to
Yeah, that's
again
cool.
have that.
That's pretty cool.
And they were good sets too. They were Zendikar and
good set.
Amonkhet, which both could have masterpieces in them. So,
Right.
But so talking to them, I was like, well, what's the most popular format here? And I thought they might say modern. And they did. But I said, how's standard here? And they go, nobody plays standard because they can't.
Too expensive.
Too expensive
Yeah.
to buy the packs.
Right.
And they didn't say nobody. They said we have a following. I said, how about Commander? And they said, oh, there's always people playing Commander.
Right.
But modern is their most.
Modern is
Popular?
their most popular.
Wow. Then
And I
that
had
makes
heard
sense
that.
because they're whales. Modern's so expensive. If you got disposable income, you can afford it.
Well, you also could see Legacy. They said they have some Legacy players or
Sure.
Vintage. That's a very
Well,
Which
the other-
Commander tends to lean in this area towards people who, they don't. Modern's more expensive, is what I
Right.
would say. Yeah.
right. But so, and then just kind of talking to them. I'm like, do you have any artist proofs? Because I talked about recently about my new addiction within my addiction.
Yeah.
And they go, why, yes, we do. And they brought out their book of artist proofs. And then,
Wow.
A book of it?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's so cool.
A book.
Wow.
Because their guy goes to all the cons, he goes up to the tables. He'll buy artist proofs. He'll pay them more to do art and stuff. So I got some with art in the back.
Very cool.
And then they're like, we actually have some, since he just got back from Amsterdam, we haven't even gone through yet. So I got to look through stuff that wasn't even in the book.
Wow.
How many did you buy?
I only bought 3 from them because I bought some pretty expensive ones. I bought a masterpiece counterspell from the not from Kaladesh, from the Kaldheim.
Okay.
Not Kaldheim, Strixhaven.
Strixhaven
when they had
block.
the Mystical Archives, not Masterpiece. Mystical Archives.
Okay.
Counterspell.
Well, I was going to say Masterpiece would be very expensive.
Yeah, I don't think there was a Masterpiece counterspell, but and I bought a Heroic Intervention.
Okay.
And then I bought, it's a Sea of Cloud, which is a land that comes in attached for a blue or white. But on the back was this gorgeous like jungle scene that the guy had drawn.
Really?
Like just in pencil. But the whole back was covered in it. It was really cool. So
That is cool.
I got that one too, but I mean those 3 were, I think it came out to like $300
Okay.
total.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So I had actually picked out for a friend of mine that plays Chris. She plays what's the name of the new one? I think the name of the creature is Loot.
Okay.
Oh yeah, the little guy
fox
from
guy.
Strixhaven. I mean, not Strixhaven. Thunder Junction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like a fox guy or
Yeah,
something.
blue, green, white. I think he's Bant or something.
Something like that. But they had in that stack of stuff that they hadn't gone through, they had that, and it was really cool, like etched foil. And I'm like, oh, and they had like 7 of them. I like, they had to call the owner to ask how much the artist proofs were. They didn't just have prices on them. So they added that to the ones to ask about. Well, come to find out, that was the most expensive one almost. That one was $250.
Oh,
no way.
I am not buying that
cows.
as a gift. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no.
So I did not end up getting that. Sorry, Chris. But really great selection there. Really great guys. Very helpful.
Cool.
And in passing, I mentioned the podcast, and they said they'd check us out. So hopefully we got some new listeners there overseas.
International listeners. Let's
Yeah,
go.
we've gone
dude.
international, baby.
That's right.
And now this part isn't overseas, but so when I got back, we got unintentionally delayed in Philadelphia.
Right.
We ended up having to spend an extra day there. So we were trying to figure out what to do. And we went as a family to an aquarium. But then afterwards I said, hey, there's a card shop nearby. So I went and checked it out. And this one was called Dark Depth Games in Philadelphia.
That fits with the aquarium.
Right.
That's pretty. That's a sick
Good
name
flavor
too.
there.
Right. Yeah. Theme. And so I chose the right store because apparently they have the best singles collection, they said, in that tri-state area.
Holy cows.
And I believe it.
Yeah.
Their binders, like, so they had a blue binder. I'm not even exaggerating. It was like 5 or 6 inches thick. It was ridiculous.
Jeez.
And I'm
Of
like,
artist proofs?
no,
No,
just
just
of
cards, single
Oh.
cards in general.
But so I went all the way through that, and that took like an hour.
Right. Yeah.
And then
And
I
your
looked.
family just waited there?
My family's cool.
Very, very cool.
And by the way, this shop was awesome. We hadn't even been there 5 minutes. My son had his Game Boy, so his Switch. He was fine, right? And my wife was taking pictures outside and stuff. She was fine. But the guy said, "Does your son play Pokemon?" I said, "Well, he collects them. He doesn't really play."
Right.
And he goes, "Oh yeah, that's most kids." But he gave him a pack for free.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's
And
super
like
nice.
I said, it's not like that was after the hour.
They need to steal Habib's line from when he was fighting Conor McGregor. And he said, I'm going to take him into deep waters and let him find himself. So dark depths, we take you into deep waters and let you find yourself.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
But so after I got done with that binder, I looked down. That was binder 1 of 2 of blue spells.
Oh my goodness.
Then they had another equally thick binder of blue creatures.
Jeez.
So I spent less time going through. I was a little faster going through those other 2.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was it. And I got to the end and I was
Right.
done.
And
they're
it just said
like,
volume
"We got
1
even more."
Yeah, it's just said volume 1 of 2 on the last page.
Oh, you're done? Here's one more. Oh, you're done? Here's one more.
And by the way, a lot of tables here, a lot of product here. And then I happened to ask when I was checking out, I'm like, just curious, do you have any artist proofs? He goes, oh yeah, we keep them in the back. He goes, everything in the binders is just $5 or less. We have all the big stuff in the back.
Oh my goodness.
Well, that's the thing about a city. like you go to any of these cities, they're gonna have a lot more stuff because they have a lot more people to sell to.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we're in a pretty small town.
But Duncan, the most important thing, how was the aesthetic of the store?
Jeff would hate it.
really, it was
The walls
bad.
were pitch black. I mean, it's called Dark Depths. This was also a heavy metal store, by the way, which I'm a heavy metal fan. So
Rock
that
on,
was
baby.
awesome.
Well, okay, but if they have a theme and does it fit the theme and does it
Yeah.
look good, or did it just look like they didn't?
I mean, it
try?
looked like a black heavy metal store. Yeah, like the walls are pitch black. The table tops are pitch black. Like
And black table condoms.
they got band posters everywhere. They have,
I can't deal with you guys. Unbelievable.
but they had signed pictures from a lot of bands, like big name bands up too, because the bands come through.
mean, it is
so they're
Philadelphia,
double
so-
double meaning for their name then, huh?
Yeah.
Wild.
But I ended up getting a Living Plains from Legends
Okay.
artist proof.
That's pretty cool.
That's my prize artist proof right now.
Even more than your didn't you get a Gin Contaxious one?
I do, and so that is tough. But I mean, as far as like value,
Yeah.
it doesn't even come close.
Right.
Maybe if I get some art on the back by Eric Deschamps, who did the art for that.
Yeah.
But
That's cool.
so
Well,
that's my travels, and what I wanted to point out, like that's what I'm gonna do from now on. When I go on vacation, wife willing, I'm going to go
I
into
need to
a
just
store.
give you a couple $100 when you go then.
Yeah, just give me a
we're,
list.
We're going to Cannes, Nice, and Monte Carlo in October, but I'm not thinking maybe Jenica will let me go to a card shop.
I mean, you're bringing her to Europe. I think she will.
Yeah, and I would guess a card shop in Monte Carlo would be pretty cool if they have one.
Right.
Like,
I mean, do some research. There probably is. Now, I went to a lot of small Greek islands. There were no shops on Mykonos or Santorini
Right.
or, Rhodes, but, I went to the ones I could find. Check
Sure.
out stores when you travel. You're going to be
Yeah.
surprised at what you find in some of these. You're going to find
I would
some
like to
cool
talk
things.
to people there.
Yeah, that's
think
what I
that'd
had
be
the
pretty
most fun
cool.
doing. Like
Yeah.
I said, Arham and Gorkum, they were really cool guys, very helpful. And so just a quick side note to that. So I made a very large purchase there, but I was there a little while and I bought some cards at the Pegasus Toys. And when it was all done, when we first come in, my son and my wife went back to that counter
Yeah.
and got sodas
Yeah.
and sat down. And when I was all done, I paid. And as I'm walking towards my son and wife, she goes, "Did you pay for our drinks?" I go, "I thought you paid for them back there." And she's like, No. He goes, "They're on us."
oh,
Yeah.
nice.
It was super nice. But I mean, I did just spend a ton of money there. But I still thought that was very nice. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share
You're
my
welcome.
travels and the nice people I met and the cool stuff I saw, and just kind of encourage you to check out shops wherever you go. You never know what you're going to find.
For sure.
Sloan, you got any tips for the beginners?
Yeah, so we're going to jump on the learning the lingo, and we're going to jump back into deck types. We had mentioned 5 a while ago, I think back on episode 6 or 7. So here's 5 more deck types that you're going to see out in the wild, kind of talking about your travels and experiencing different types of Magic around the world. We're going to talk about different types of deck types you're going to see in the world. So starting first with Chaos. This is generally known as a deck type that thrives off of the chaos in the game itself. So built with the goal of not to necessarily win as quickly as possible, but to create as confusing or complex of a board state as possible. A lot of times things like coin flips and dice rolling, or whenever you cast a spell, do something else instead, falls in this category. So this would be Usury. Blue-red commander I have, flip a coin whenever he attacks, choose a number, you get to do fun stuff with it. So chaos is just kind of anything goes to get you to an end goal point kind of idea. Second deck type is going to be control, affectionately known as the Duncan deck type in our group. And so control is going to be is a deck term for a deck cards with aims to control an opponent's card's progression and ideally results with full control over everything that is done during the game to then take advantage of that and win. Typically, your blue players are going to be this, which is what Duncan is. He's our token blue player, so he's very control deck oriented. A lot of his stuff is counter spells or bounce it back to your hand or, don't let you do what you want to do. So Duncan, favorite control commander that you got?
Yeah,
Who would
heavy
you throw at?
interaction.
My favorite control commander is always going to be Jin Gataxius.
Yeah.
You have no hand, and I'll draw 7 cards at the end of each turn.
There you go. So he loves that. So that's a great control commander. Next is going to be Jeff's favorite play style, which is stacks. So stacks is the idea of a strategy of resources denial that uses permanents with abilities that prevent players from performing actions in the game. So
yes, and doesn't like to make friends.
yeah. So this is going to be, you can't target my stuff unless you pay more. You can't attack me unless you pay more. Whenever you do something, you have to pay more. I get to do something. And to the point of where it's also you can
you just can't do that.
You just can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's another one. So for me, I built a Lavinia Azorius Renegade that does this. Spells can't that are cast with 0. If no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So she does that, and then there's combos you do with it where you make people, if they are cast a spell, exile instead, and then they get to cast one for free. Well, then she counters it, so no one can ever cast a spell. Only you get to cast stuff. So that's a stacks deck. That's the goal of it. The next one is going to be Spellslinger / Storm. So this is kind of doubled up. They kind of overlap pretty heavily.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the idea with these types of decks is you're going to often contains a mix of a lot of low-cost spells that can be casted in quick succession, but also with high-cost spells that are super powerful that then allow you to, as they call it, storming off. So you then get to cast a bunch, and then it essentially ends the game. So your idea of this is someone who is going to either cast the spells that literally say storm on them, so they get to copy it for every time a spell has been cast this turn, and it's known as a storm count. Or these are decks that are mainly focused on instants and sorceries being slung. So this is going to be, for me, my Calamax deck does this. He focuses heavily on instances. And then your last deck for this one, we're going to do Lands Matter. So some people call it Landfall, but Lands Matter is a little bit more inclusive because Landfall, there are specific cards that say Landfall and have a Landfall ability. So it's a little bit different than that because you can have decks that are Lands Matters deck where it's just about having the lands do stuff. So for me, Arkelos is this, and what that essentially means is you putting the lands into play give you value or do extra benefits for you. Not necessarily a landfall ability, even though a lot of them do have landfall stuff in them. But Arkelos specifically is he makes permanents come in untapped, so there's lands that usually have to come in tapped, but because he's out and he's
Yours
untapped.
is more land shenanigans than
Yeah,
landfall.
and it's because it's their lands matter, which is why that's kind of the more broad terminology a lot of people use. But landfall does fall underneath that category. So lands matters decks are just the ones that you're going to probably see closer to 30 plus lands in those decks. Mine, I think, has 40 in it. And it's specifically because once I get the right cards out, I just kind of infinitely go off, and because my lands just keep coming in and out and producing mana. So those are 5 deck types you're going to see in the world of Magic, Commander specific for the most part, but those are some more terminology. So if you hear us sling those terms around to each other, it's a Storm deck or Lands Matters. Now you have an idea of what we mean when we say those.
Right. So those are good ones. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I want to thank Jack May at Info Pilgrims for editing, producing, putting up with us. Yeah. You can check us out at commanderspod.com. You can email us at cast@commanderspod.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Check out our YouTube, Commanders Pod.
Absolutely.
And patreon.com/commanderspod. We'd love to have you support us there. And remember, everyone, kill Andrew first.
If you can.